Hey, what's up? So today I'm going to look at some new pickups, the Fishman Mick Thomson signatures. So stay tuned. All right, guys. So I got in the brand new Fishman Mick Thomson Fluence pickups. I went ahead and I installed them in this ESP Horizon. This has become like my pickup guitar. Like anytime I get a new set, I'm like, I'm going to put them in this guitar. So let's just run through some of the tones and talk about some of the awesome things about these pickups and some of the kind of meh things about these pickups. So first up, I pulled up the Soldano Neural DSP plugin just to kind of get a basic kind of crunch tone so we can kind of cycle through the voicings. So first up, we got the bridge pickup on voice 1. Voice 2. And the difference between voice 1 and 2 on almost any Fishman pickup is voice 1 is going to be a little hotter, a little more mid-range and less low-end, and then voice 2 will be rounder, softer, less output. And you can hear that when you switch back and forth. So yeah, it's easy to tell. Going to the neck pickup, same thing kind of going on. Voice 1, bit hotter, more kind of girth. So that's pretty cool. I'm a big fan of the dual voicings. It's cool to have that little bit of variation. Now, what this set of pickups does have on it, which I think the new Fishman Moderns have, as well as the open core Moderns, is the ability to not only switch to a single coil voice 3, but there's actually a couple different lead wires that allow you to switch between the outer coils and the inner coils of the actual pickup. So in this guitar, what I did was I installed a two-way mini toggle switch. In the down position, it's just an open, non-grounded connection, so you're only getting voice 1 and 2 activated. And then if you flip it up, you activate voice 3, and then on the tone knob, I put the push-pull here so you can switch between outer coils and inner coils. So let's hear what that sounds like. And then with the outer coil, so with the outer coil, you're getting a little bit more top end, less low end. It's closer to the bridge, so there should be more high end. And then if we go to the neck pickup, it should basically be the opposite. You know, the inner coil should be a little bit more top end focused, and then the outer coil should actually give you a little bit more darker, rounder sound. So here's neck pickup with the inner coil. And then with the outer coil. It's pretty subtle, the shift in the outer coil and the inner coil and the neck pickup. They're both kind of darker. I will say that there seems to be a little bit more of an output or something a little bit more forward sounding about that inner coil sound. One of my favorite sounds with these split tones is both inner coils activated at once. Just very, I don't know, just classic like 80s vibe kind of single coil sound. And the cool thing about these pickups is when you have them in the middle position and they're split, they cancel out any hum. There's no hum. So on a Fishman pickup, when you have the third voice activated, it acts like a real single coil. You actually do have just a single coil voice happening, and you do get a 60 cycle kind of thing going on. Whereas with these pickups, you have both coils activated, inner or outer, in this circuit, and it'll cancel out all hum. So here's the inner coil again. And that's the outer coil sound with both coils. I like the inner coil a little bit better. The outer coils, they're a little bit darker, a little bit more scooped and kind of flat. Either way, you know, Mick Thomson, Slipknot, you're probably not considering that there's all this tonal variety in this set of pickups. So let's move on to some high gain tones and really get into what, you know, these pickups are built for. All right, so I've switched over to just a high gain setting, something that I dialed in a while ago on this amp, using the Soldano. Probably not the first amp you think of when you think of Slipknot. You probably think of something more along the lines of the Omega and the Rivera that, you know, Mick has, and even, you know, going over to Jim, you know, he has the orange stuff. He's had Mesa Boogies, but, you know, Soldano, you know, it kind of fits the bill, so let's just go with it. By the way, I'm in drop B because, you know, Slipknot. So that's voice one. Voice one is billed as being kind of a tight, very aggressive, punchy voice. And when I'm playing on this and I listen to it and I compare it to the moderns that I had in this before, these don't really have the same mid-range character that I remember from the Fishman moderns. These seem to be a little bit pulled back towards a flatter kind of mid-range, but still very hot. You know, playing on these, I do get the sense that these are a little bit closer to that old EMG sound. And maybe that's something that Mick was going for because he has played on EMGs in the past. I've never really had experience with his Seymour Duncan signature pickups, so I don't really know how those sound compared to these, but I would be curious to see if, you know, anybody out there does eventually do that comparison. Going on to voice 2, we get a little bit more low-end chunk and a little bit less overall saturation. And to me, it's actually one of the more softer voice 2s, especially on a high gain set, that I've come across. The only other one that kind of compares to it is maybe the Kill Switch Engage set. That voice 2 is also a little bit more subdued. I really like the voice 2 on this. Yeah, the low end, that more kind of just girthy, you know, growl. It's just really nice to have that. And, you know, it's pretty similar on the moderns too. Like, I think a lot of people really gravitate towards the second voicing on the Fishmans overall. I think with this set, though, you get a little bit of the best of both. You get, you know, that passive tone with that really nice low end, but that voice 1 isn't nearly as mid-focused as the moderns, and you get that kind of more old-school metal sound. Going on to the neck pickup with the high gain stuff, it's kind of par for the course. I don't really think that the shining achievement here is the neck pickup per se. It's good sounding. So if you go to voice 1 on the neck with high gain, it's got a really harmonic rich texture. It's cool. Like it's a little less over the top compared to like the Al Nico pickup on the moderns. I think the Al Nico voice 1 is a little bit boosted and a little bit oversaturated for my taste. Voice 2 on this, though. Even with this high gain setting, it's voiced in such a way that the high gain tone here is really being shaped a bit more by the neck pickup. It's not nearly as aggressive sounding just based on that. So if I go to voice 1, there's a high-end kind of taper. It's pretty subtle, but it makes that mid-range less like, forward. It doesn't really cut as much. So if you're playing more like blues, rock kind of stuff, I think it'd be really cool to have that as like, your tone. All right, so I've moved on to a different amp here. This is the Fortin Cali Suite from Neural DSP. If you saw my Neural DSP tier list, you'll know this is one of my S tier amps for high gain. And I think this is more suited towards the Mick Thomson Slipknot sound. Voice 1, I still really like it. It just really has a nice attack and a nice smooth frequency response. When I was looking on the website for Fishman, I noticed that the peak frequency on this is more in line with the Alnico magnet modern as opposed to the ceramic modern. I think, that little bit darker peak is kind of cool. Again, just it doesn't really sound like a modern to me. It sounds more like somebody took an EMG and a modern and smashed them together. Voice 2 again. Yeah, you can hear on this amp a bit more of that voice 2 trunk come through. I really do like that less saturated and boosted tone from the pickup because it gives you a little bit more clarity to when you're picking. Voice 1 is a little bit more kind of crispy, noisy. So tonally, I think the pickups are great. I think there's a lot of cool stuff going on here. But there are a couple things that I was kind of like, when I got these. And, and maybe when you look at these, you'll be a little bit like, too. The first thing, I'm a little disappointed that there's not like some sort of like thing to differentiate these, from a aesthetic perspective from the moderns. Online, it looks like there's like a gray stripe, similar to like the KSE set, but there's not. It's just the lighting. When you get these, they're just a flat black. It would have been cool to see some sort of color or some sort of variation in the covers on these. The other thing that's kind of interesting about this set, there is something called a bass boost, and I did have that wired up for a hot second. The only problem was trying to demonstrate what it does was kind of difficult. Engaging it didn't really produce any kind of noticeable difference whether I was using a plugin or using an actual amp. When I tried to use a frequency analyzer to see what was going on, what I could see was a little bit of an expansion of how much low-end frequencies were able to come through. And the idea of a bass boost, I wasn't really getting that. And I made sure to go through and test my continuity with a multimeter on every piece of the puzzle here to make sure I wasn't, installed incorrectly. But once I was able to kind of measure what was going on, it was apparent to me that really what's going on is it's more of like a bass expander. There's a little bit of a bump in some of the lower frequencies, and some of the mids even were kind of a little bit augmented. And the only audible way I could actually hear it, I put on my headphones and I turned them up pretty loud, and I kind of set the gain in such a way that, there wasn't a whole lot of extraneous noise going on. And then I actually did hear something going on, but under those conditions, just it's not feasible to try to show you guys what that even does. And for me, I went ahead and I reinstalled these without it, reconfigured the installation to omit the bass boost. So if someone out there can better capture what the bass boost does or explain what the bass boost is, I would love to hear that. So beyond that, it has become my favorite voice 1 of any of the Fishmans. I still think the voice 2 on the Killswitch Engage is still my favorite passive voice for Fishmans. But these are definitely more in my wheelhouse of what I like to hear over like the standard moderns. Anyway, I just wanted to quickly kind of go over what my thoughts on these new Mick Thomson Fishman pickups are. And, hopefully you guys got something out of it. If you have any comments, suggestions, leave them in the comments. And I'm just going to keep playing on this guitar because it's really fun to play.